There are literally hundreds and hundreds of species of snake all across the world, and some of them are so wild and outlandish that they are crazier than we would ever dream to think of. And today I want to talk about 5 different snake species that you've probably never heard of, or at the very least are crazier than you really first thought. And to start things off with, I'm going to talk about one of the most famous myths, at least here in the United States, about reptiles, and that is a rattleless rattlesnake. So we've all heard about the different tales of the rattlesnakes that either don't have rattles or they've learned to stop using them. And I'm going to hail back to something that I learned while I was at Reptile Gardens in South Dakota, which is I've never heard of any animal that ever needed directions from its butt to tell it whether or not it was going to bite something. But there is actually a species of rattleless rattlesnake. Out of the more than 30 different species of Crotalus, or Crotalus, it's Crotalus, out there, the Catalina Island rattlesnake is the only one that doesn't have a true rattle. So, obviously, endemic to the island of Catalina off the coast of California, this is a pretty small species of rattlesnake, usually under 2.5 feet long. They have 2 distinct color phases, which is kind of a light creamish color and then a more mottled gray with darker blotches on it. Now, there's kind of some weird stuff going on with the Catalina Island rattlesnake. So obviously, it doesn't have a rattle. If you look at it, it's just kind of like a little nub button at the end of the tail that sheds off with the rest of the skin when it goes into shed. But they have some other really weird things too. For starters, is that oftentimes when they're discovered, they're out in the middle of the day, with the exception of the hottest parts of the summer, just fully basking versus a lot of the cryptic basking that we see from a lot of other species of rattlesnake and snakes in general. The other thing is they don't really run away nearly as much, despite the fact that they don't have a rattle. So there's still some kind of really weird thing going on with them. Now, they are a really cool species of rattlesnake, being endemic only to the small little island, but unfortunately they're also very endangered because of human expansion and harvesting and all the other fun stuff that they've now put up in crops on the island, as well as the introduction of invasive cats which have gone feral across the island, which kill the small little guys, as well as being a venomous snake and a snake in general. The inhabitants of the island, worried about their own safety or tourist safety or just general misconceptions about them, have killed them off and are now a listed and protected species. Hopefully we can manage to do enough captive breeding programs, I know they're working with them at the Omaha's Henry Dorley Zoo, that we can continue to have these absolutely amazing, weirder than life rattlesnakes for the future. Next up are some of the more snake aficionados probably have heard of these guys, and that are the thread snakes. Now, thread snakes isn't a single species, there's actually a bunch of them, and they're basically broken up into 2 different families. They all have a lot in common, and they're found on quite a few different continents: Africa, North America, South America, parts of Asia. And these guys are the smallest snakes in general, hence thread snake. And they, while all being different, they all have a lot in common. They're all exclusively fossorial, which means they spend their entire time underground, even more than like Kenyan sand boas and stuff. A lot of them have very poor eyesight. Some of them don't even have external eyes, which is crazy. They're all very, very tiny. Most of them average under 6 inches in general, and they all have very high iridescence. For something kind of weird about those fossorial snakes, a lot of times like the sunbeam snakes and all those other things, they're very, very high in iridescence, which is so crazy. As well as a lot of them almost exclusively eat ant and termite, either adults, larvae, or pupa. They have documented that several species of the thread snakes, more specifically a type of South American blind snake, will actually eat the adult ones, and they'll just kind of like suck out the good stuff and leave the kind of like exoskeleton husk out there. Kind of gross, I know. But these guys are, a lot of the times they are actually endangered because of like human plantations and deforestation and turning up the soil, which makes it very difficult for them to live in. So a lot of times when we do find them, they're either found in like horticultured farms and nurseries where the soil is much more well tended and nourished versus big, large commercial farms where they normally would be, which is why a lot of times several species of blind and thread snakes will show up in like potted house plants at like your local Home Depot and Lowe's and stuff. And I know several people that have kept them, or at least attempted to keep them for several years, because they just happen to show up. The world's smallest snake is one of these, and it's actually the Barbados blind snake. And it is so small, it will actually fit on a quarter. it's absolutely tiny and really, really cool. And again, like a lot of the other species, they are unfortunately endangered. The next one is a really, really cool species of snake. And I remember I was just like a young teenager, maybe 13 or 14, when the very first time I saw one of these in real life. And that is the tentacled snake. Now, this is a species of snake that you might actually be able to ignore the cat, actually be able to keep if you live in an area where you're allowed to have something like this. So this is a very small, rear-fanged, venomous, purely aquatic snake that hails from parts of Southeast Asia. Now, when I say they're fully aquatic, I mean that. They are known to live in fairly murky water of both fresh, brackish, and sometimes up to almost full salt water. Now, they are called tentacled snake for a pretty obvious reason. And I think the lights just turned off behind me, so sorry about that. Hopefully it doesn't get too dark. They are called tentacled snakes because they have those two little appendages out there. There are debating ideas whether or not they're used for like sensory or anything like that, but they still look really, really cool. But I said they're a smaller species of snake. They usually are about 3-ish feet long, and they're usually kind of like a mottled, broken, brownish color, although there are striped individuals out there as well. Now, these guys being exclusively aquatic, although there is noted documentation of them coming up and basking partially or even fully on floating logs or large plants that will sit at the top of the surface of the water, that means their diet is almost exclusively fish. And these guys exhibit a very unique hunting behavior, where a lot of times they will spend their time fully submerged underwater in a kind of like a candy cane or hook shape, blending in, looking like a reed or fallen log or just kind of plant detritus under this kind of fairly murky-ish water. And in this hook, essentially, and this is the part where they think that those tentacles actually come in handy, they'll use it to kind of slowly maneuver the snake towards it in that hook, and then they'll kind of come down and like half lasso it in that little snake candy cane. It's a really, really cool species of snake. It is fully aquatic. However, being rear-fang venomous, there do pose some issues, like here in Colorado, as well as being fully aquatic. It's a little bit more difficult. You have to get all the water conditions just right. It has to be warm, it has to be nice and filtered, fairly murky, all this other fun stuff, as well as most aquatic snakes end up trying to escape. So you have to have a really nice escape-proof enclosure for these. This next one is really cool and has been gaining a little bit more notoriety. And every time I try to do one of these fun little videos, a more well-known reptile YouTuber always ends up doing a video about it, so more people know about it, which sometimes helps out my boost in the algorithm, but whatever that may be. This one hails from the island of Madagascar, and this is the Malagasy or Madagascar leaf-nosed snake. It is a really, really cool species of snake. And when you first look at it, you're probably thinking, okay, so it's like a brown rhino rat snake? Well, there's quite a few differences. For one thing, they're much smaller. Rhino rat snakes can usually get well up into the 4.5, 5 foot range. These guys, both males and females, typically stay right around 3 feet long, as well as the protuberances are much longer, and they are rear-fang venomous. There are 3 different species of them on the island, and I'm going to try not to butcher this, but like always, I'll put it right here. These guys belong to the genus Langaha, and the most commonly found both on the island in the wild and in the hobby, so yes, you can get one of these guys if you really, really try, is the Madagascarensis. Now, in addition to all these kind of really interesting things, there's something extra weird and special about these guys, and that is that they are very sexually dimorphic. Now, most of the time in reptiles, that usually means that one is bigger than the other. In birds, it usually means that like the males are much more colorful and the females a little bit more drab color. In the case of the Malagasy leaf-nosed snake, the males are those very iconic, picturesque ones that you think of when you first hear the name. They're the ones that are kind of that like nice walnut brown on the top, yellow on the bottom with the long viney protuberance that's kind of more pointed and conical. Females look very different. They're actually more of a mottled brown to gray color, and their nose protuberance isn't conical at all. It's more flat, and it's shaped very irregularly with different kind of, almost looks like chunks cutting out of it, where it looks more like an actual leaf. Out of the 3 different ones, the Madagascarians are the more popular ones, but the other ones end up looking a little bit different because they live in different areas of Madagascar. Madagascar is a crazy island. and different areas have all sorts of different vegetations and climates. Part of the island where the other two species live, it's much more dry. It's a more dry desert, and there's more thorn scrub vegetation there. So their protuberances look much more thorny. They're kind of a paler white-gray color to blend in more with that. But the Madagascarensis, the one that we're talking about, is the most common. They both have a fairly similar attitudes when it comes to feeding, which is a lot of times the younger ones specifically will actually sit there and dangle from vegetation, usually about 3 to 5 feet off the ground, trying to look like kind of like dried pods and branches from their vegetation, and they grab their prey. These guys are almost exclusively lizard eaters. So in captivity, because we can get them, like I said before, these guys eat exclusively lizard eaters. That's actually what they evolved to do, and trying to switch them over to mammals, even if you manage to successfully do it, will cause long-term problems in the end. So this is a species that, again, will only eat live lizards. So you're going to have a whole little colony of these guys set up. There's a lot of people that I've looked into that have tried to keep them. They've only been reproduced once ever, so don't ever think that's probably going to be something, but I welcome everyone to give it their best shot to try. They supposedly, once you can get one established and pass the parasite load and all that, and you have a nice healthy supply of live lizards like day geckos or anoles, then these guys supposedly can be a fairly sturdy specimen in captivity. As far as their rear fang venom goes, there haven't been any fatalities or anything, but the only couple instances that I could find, I read that it is significantly painful, but it won't cause any long-term damage or health concerns. So one more thing to kind of keep in mind. Last on the list is probably one that a lot of people have heard of. About 5 or 6 years ago, it was relatively unknown, but it's gained quite a bit of notoriety. And this is the only poisonous snake in the world, the tiger keelback. Now, the tiger keelback is a venomous species of colubrid that is found in parts of Southeast Asia, the furthest east parts of Southeast Asia, as well as on some islands of Taiwan and Japan. Now, these guys, as I said, are a venomous colubrid, and their main diet consists of venomous or poisonous toads. Several different species of them, but that's what they tend to eat. And then, through a process of very similar to that of the poison dart frogs, which are very famous for eating the poisonous insects, they convert those toxins and use them for themselves for their own protection. That is the same way that the tiger keelback, that gets its name from the kind of really cool orange, yellowish, red, checkered, almost checkered-like pattern that they have on the back of their necks and the top of their backs. That's what they do with those poisonous toads that they eat. They convert it to poison, and they have it right on the back of their necks in 2 different little poison glands, that when a predator comes up and tries to take a bite out of it, that they will excrete that poison, thus the only venomous and poisonous snake. Now, as I said, a lot of people probably knew about this, but recently they did a study, and it seems to be, there is quite a bit of evidence to say that these guys actually know when they have enough of these toxins in their system to provide significant and potential and potent enough amounts to be a good defense, and their behavior changes when they don't. Different scientists, both in Japan and in the United States, raised up captive bred tiger keelbacks, as well as witnessing this in different islands where the keelbacks are found. They found that snakes that didn't have any access to the poisonous toads' toxins to be able to convert to their own would be much more flighty. They would always try to run away much more readily than the animals that had significant amounts of that toxin available. They would actually be much more bold and more of a stand your ground kind of a defense. So it seems to be that snakes are fully aware of whether or not they have that poisonous threat or poisonous defense as well. Really, really interesting. We're always learning something new about these really cool species of snakes out there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Let me know if you knew about any of these or not. I always try to find really interesting and fun little ones, like the viper that has the really cool tail. We've talked about that. There's the rhinoceros and all the other different types of vipers out there. So I wanted to try to do something a little bit more different, as well as a different or at least one that isn't well known that we're learning more and more about. So again, hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. I have a whole different list of like the top 5 or the best or some great choices of 5 playlist. If you want to check that out, really helps my click-through rate. Please like and subscribe if you can. If you are able to, I please, and always am very appreciative, I should say, of if you guys want to check out my Patreon, help support everything that I do here. All of it goes back into this to either upgrade enclosures, so there's more benefit for the animals. There's varying levels from $1 all the way up with a bunch of different Patreon rewards, including t-shirts, online tours, ready access, and early availability lists when it comes to producing animals, yada, yada, yada. But again, thank you all so much. I really do appreciate all of you guys in this really fun little community that we're building, and hopefully we're gonna hit our goal of hitting 10,000 subscribers this year. I really do appreciate all you guys. I really do. It means the world to me. And again, thank you all so much. Hope you're having a great day, and we'll check you next time.